Hello and welcome to this bonus episode of Straight Talk. We had a lot more we wanted to ask Portland City Commissioner Mingus Mapps during our main Straight Talk episode. You can find that on KGW's YouTube channel. But we ran out of time, so we're going to ask a few more questions in this bonus round. Thanks again for being here, Commissioner Mapps. And as we talked about in our main episode, you have announced that you're running for Portland Mayor in 2024, the first candidate to do so. And one of the important issues that we didn't get to in the main episode is climate. Yeah. Because Portland has really ambitious climate goals to cut carbon emissions by, I think it's 40% in 5 years, 50% by 2030, net zero by 2050. As mayor elected, how committed would you be to achieving those goals, and how would you do it?
Oh, I'm all about implementation. The plan is to reduce our carbon emissions by about 40% in the next 5 years or so. I think we can get there. These carbon emissions largely come out of two spaces. One, transportation, and I have a lot of control over that now, and the other is housing. We can achieve these goals by, better insulation, heat pumps and whatnot in the housing space, and then over on the transportation side, supporting the conversion to electric transportation options, public transportation options, biking. If we can do both of these things, and I believe that we can actually dramatically reduce the amount of carbon that goes into our air, which is incredibly important. We all remember the heat dome of a couple of years ago. I'll tell you, we have a forest fire out by Bull Run right now, which is remarkable, something we haven't really seen for about 600 years. I think the debate about whether or not climate change is real is over, and it's time for us to act.
You mentioned the fire, the Camp Creek fire. You're the head of the Water Bureau, and that's burning near Portland's water supply, the Bull Run watershed. Fortunately, we have a little bit cooler weather. We did have some rain that's helped a little bit, but the fire's still burning, still out of control. How concerned have you been about it contaminating the water supply?
Extremely concerned. Not so much about contaminating the water supply, but this is a 1,900-acre fire, which is about 1.9 miles away from my headworks. The headworks is basically a facility that we use to do some very simple but important treatment of water. If that fire, which is less than 2 miles away from my headworks, I have to pull my staff out of there. We can't treat our water, which means, the fortunate thing is we do have a plan B, which is we can go to groundwater. But even towards the end of the summer, our groundwater supplies are relatively low. So if we went to groundwater, we'd actually really need to ask Portlanders to reduce their water consumption. But the good news is we have about 500 firefighters who are out there literally working around the clock, and they've been doing it for weeks. We have the fire about 16% contained at this point, and the rains are starting to come. I think my staff is starting to sleep again, but I will tell you, there was probably about a week there where my folks in my office and folks in the Water Bureau were essentially not sleeping at all as we're trying to stay on top of this very scary situation.
So bring on the rain.
Oh my gosh, yes. Pray for rain, for sure.
You talk about climate change, and we've seen some dead trees that may be attached to or associated with climate change. You had a PBOT, we've talked about that. Just over 2 years ago, PBOT got federal infrastructure money to plant 30 trees in the East Portland neighborhood of Mill Park. And the Willamette Week reported the city paid a contractor to plant the trees and water them for a year. That contract ran out last spring, but PBOT didn't keep watering the trees. Japanese maples, Douglas firs, redwood, many of them are dying or have died. What happened there, and how do you feel about that?
Well, I'm frustrated by that. I'm embarrassed by that, and I've learned a lot from it. What happened in that particular space is PBOT had a significant infrastructure project. As part of that infrastructure project, we planted some trees. We had a plan in place to maintain those trees, I think, for a year or two. But then after that year or two, the trees hadn't actually established themselves to the degree to which they could just survive without some intervention, some watering and whatnot. What should have happened is we should have negotiated a contract with the urban forester program that we have at the city so they could maintain the trees. That connection didn't happen. But moving forward, I expect this not to happen again for two reasons. One, I've ordered PBOT to review all of our infrastructure projects where we do plant trees. Let's have a plan for making sure that we maintain them. And then in about 17 months, we're going to move to a new form of government, which actually moves beyond the commission form of government. So the barriers between PBOT and the urban forestry program will really begin to will disappear, and just making sure that we do that kind of planning across time and across bureaus will get much simpler. I think this is why we actually passed charter reform, is to make sure that embarrassing situations like these underwater trees don't happen again.
Do you think communication will be better in the new form of government?
Oh, I do. I'm sure they will be. And even before that, one of the things that Ted Wheeler did, which I think was quite smart, is he put all the infrastructure bureaus under me. So I have Water, BES, and PBOT. And one of the things I do is I have my bureau directors literally meet together on a weekly basis to actually talk about how their projects intersect. And all the things I mentioned right there basically happen in the right of way, in roads. BES buries its sewer pipes in the road, Water buries its sewer pipes in the road, PBOT paves the roads. It's very important for those folks to talk to each other. I think it's also important, and a character that's been kind of missing from the conversation historically has been the urban forestry program, because trees also happen in our road spaces. We've actually done great works with the Parks Bureau to bring the urban forester into these conversations. We're already doing a much better job. And as we move forward to the new form of government in 2025, that's going to be how the city of Portland functions on a day-to-day basis. And you'll see that in infrastructure, you'll see that in permitting, you'll see that in public safety, you'll see that in houselessness. There really is a bright new day coming.
A lot of Portlanders are concerned about what they see on the streets as far as drug use
Oh
goes.
my gosh, yes.
And City Council responded this week by passing an ordinance banning public drug use. It adds drugs to an already existing ban on drinking alcohol in public, which seems unbelievable to a lot of people, that you cannot drink alcohol in public, but you can use fentanyl and meth. But there's a legal hurdle to your ordinance. The state currently doesn't allow cities to pass such a ban, which also seems a little bit strange. How much do you think this ordinance is going to make a difference? Do you think it's going to matter?
Well, the way I look at it with the ordinance we passed, and this is crazy, and most Portlanders will not believe this, but as a member of City Council, we can make rules about whether or not you can drink on the sidewalk, whether or not you can smoke cigarettes on the sidewalk, whether or not you can smoke cannabis on the sidewalk. But due to state law, we do not have the authority to say you cannot smoke fentanyl on the sidewalk. So one of the things we did with the resolution we passed yesterday was urge the state legislature to change the law so Portland City Council and every city council in the state of Oregon has the authority to actually regulate what drugs you can consume in the public right of way. I'll tell you, I was just at a Labor Day picnic with many state legislators, I think last Monday. I think the legislature is going to respond to our request. And let me tell you why this is so important. I noticed that literally today, TriMet released a study basically on the impact of secondhand fentanyl smoke in our public transportation system. And they found that 98% of the surfaces in the on TriMet buses are contaminated with meth, and 48% of the surfaces in TriMet buses and trains are contaminated with fentanyl.
That's pretty stunning.
It is stunning. Now, they're very low levels. I wouldn't necessarily stop taking the bus or stop taking the trains, but that is a signal of how out of control and unregulated the public consumption.
How prolific it's become everywhere.
Absolutely. And it terrifies me. As you know, I got little kids. Now they're teenagers, but I remember them being little, and we were a bus family and a train family. And kids kind of lick windows on the bus and chew on things. It's terrifying. It's unacceptable. I really want to take this moment to urge the state legislature to empower local governments to actually determine their own destiny when it comes to hard drugs like fentanyl and meth.
And they meet again in February?
I believe so.
One other question I have for you is the election's not until November 5th, 2024, and candidates can officially file, so you're not really officially filed until June 5th of next year, 5 months ahead of the election. Why did you jump in so early?
It's an incredibly important race. I really do think that the fate of the city depends on what happens in the next 5 years. As we mentioned before, we see people fleeing the city, which has never happened before. We see thousands of people sleeping on the streets. We see homicides out of control. We're heading into a new form of government. I very much believe that democracy is about dialogue, and we Portlanders need to come together and have a discussion about the kind of city that we want. Because if we don't have that discussion, if we don't have a vision, we risk staying on this course, and the course we're on means the city's heading in the wrong direction. It's not sustainable. I hope to retire at some point and hand the city over to my children, and I hope the city I hand to my kids is a city that is prosperous. I hope that we're a center for arts and tech. I hope that we're an industrial hub. I hope that we're a place that promotes equity, equality, and opportunity. And if we're going to get this right, Portlanders really need to focus and get this next election right.
You have a lot of goals. So.
I do have a lot of goals, but I'll tell you, there's nothing wrong with Portland that cannot be fixed by what's right with Portland, so I'm very optimistic, and I very much encourage people to participate in this very important discussion.
Commissioner Mapps, thank you for joining us here for this bonus episode of Straight Talk. We appreciate it.
Thank you. It was a pleasure.
And thank you for watching. We'll see you next week for Straight Talk.